Chapter 1. Abandoned in the Cold. The wind screamed over the white plains, howling like the spirits of the lost. Snow came sideways, burying trails and wiping away all traces of wagons, footsteps, and sin. The wagon train had moved fast, desperate to outpace the coming blizzard. In their haste, they'd left something behind. A bundle of rags stirred in the snow. Beneath them lay a child no older than 6. Her face was pale, her lips tinged blue. Her tiny chest barely rose with each breath. She had been feverish for days. When her moaning grew weaker, her mother's new husband had made a cruel decision. "She won't make it through the night," he'd said. "Better to let the snow take her than slow us down." And so they'd left her, like discarded freight, tossed beside a lone pine as the snow swallowed her whole. But she was not alone. From the edge of the trees, a pair of dark eyes watched. He wore the cloak of a hunter, the blood mark of the Shawnee tribe painted faint on his cheekbone. His name was Takoda, meaning friend to everyone, though few in these parts knew his name. Fewer still dared speak it with respect. He had been following the wagon trail for a day, not out of interest in the settlers, but because the scent of sickness carried on the wind. The spirits whispered unease. When he saw the child left behind, he knew his path had changed. Without a word, Takoda strode from the forest, lifted the child into his arms, and cradled her against his chest. Her breath fogged weakly against his collarbone. "You are not forgotten, little one," he whispered in Shawnee. "You will not die alone." Chapter 2. The Woman Who Had Lost Everything. Miles away, Clara Jennings stood behind the bar of the Broken Purr Saloon in Dry Valley, Wyoming. Her hands were raw from scrubbing, and her back ached from endless hours of lifting, pouring, pretending. Once she'd been a school teacher. Once she had a husband, a baby, and a house filled with books. Now she had whiskey bottles and bruises. Her husband died in a mining collapse 2 winters ago. Her baby, a girl born too early, never saw her first spring. The town offered no charity. A widow with no land had no power. Clara worked where she could. The saloon's owner, Doyle Haggerty, didn't care if her heart was broken, as long as her blouse stayed low and her smile stayed painted on. She hated every hour. That night, as the storm rolled in, she saw something no one else noticed. A tall figure in a deerskin coat walking straight through town, snow clinging to his shoulders. A child held close to his chest. The saloon grew quiet. Everyone recognized the long black braid and weathered bow. "Shawnee," someone hissed. "He's one of them." "Should we call the marshal?" Clara moved faster than thought. She stepped outside, arms crossed against the wind. The man stopped in front of her and their eyes locked. His were the color of rich soil, ancient and heavy. The girl in his arms was limp, her tiny hand curled like a leaf in winter. "Please," he said simply, his voice low. "She needs warmth." The words were few, but the plea in them carved through Clara's sorrow like a blade. She stepped aside. "My room's upstairs," she said. "Follow me." Chapter 3. Fever and Firelight. Clara laid the girl on her bed, lit the fire, and boiled water. She recognized pneumonia by the sound of the girl's wheezing. It was the same sickness that had taken her daughter. "We'll need sage, honey, and mustard poultice," she said, more to herself than to Takoda. "I have them," he answered, and slipped out without another word. He returned an hour later with a pouch of dried herbs and wild roots. Together they worked, grinding, boiling, wrapping cloths soaked in healing teas around the child's chest. For 2 days they stayed in that room. Takoda slept in a chair by the fire, his bow always near. Clara barely left the girl's side. She learned her name was Lillian, and her mother's name had once been Sadie, though it seemed she had taken a new name, and new man with the wagon train. He didn't even cry when they left her, Takoda said on the second night. Just stared at the sky. She was taught not to cry, Clara replied softly, like most girls in this world. For the first time, Takoda looked at Clara not as a stranger or a woman from a different world, but as someone who understood loss as deeply as he did. Their silence became a language. Chapter 4. Trouble Rides In. When Lillian's fever broke, Clara wept silently. The girl, small and weak, opened her eyes and whispered, "Where's Mama?" Neither Clara nor Takoda answered. But their peace was short-lived. 2 days later, a posse rode into town, 5 men from the wagon train. Leading them was Ephraim Doyle, Clara's old neighbor and the man who had once courted her before marrying her sister instead. "We're looking for a Shawnee," Ephraim growled. "One of 'em's been following us. Might be up to no good." Clara stepped into the snow, eyes flint. "Helms saved a child your people abandoned like garbage," she snapped. "If there's a danger here, it isn't him." Ephraim narrowed his eyes. "You're protecting a savage?" "I'm protecting a man who did more good in a week than any of you did in years." Tension crackled. Ephraim spat. "We'll be watching. That girl belongs to the wagon train. If we say she goes, she goes." "She stays," Takoda said from behind Clara, bow in hand. The men didn't press it. At least, not then. Chapter 5. The Weight of Hearts. Over the next week, Clara and Takoda built a routine. He gathered food and firewood while she nursed Lillian back to strength. Slowly, warmth crept into the little room. Lillian laughed again, wrapping her arms around Clara's waist and calling her Mama in a whisper. At night, Clara would find herself watching Takoda as he carved small wooden animals for Lillian by firelight. "You don't speak much," Clara said once. "I speak enough," he replied, "but you feel more than you let on." Takoda didn't answer. Instead, he handed her a tiny wooden bird. "You remind me of this, strong, small, meant to fly." Clara clutched the carving, her throat closed and tears slipped down her cheek. She hadn't felt seen in years. Chapter 6. Fire in the Valley. Trouble came at dawn. The posse returned with torches, surrounding the saloon. "She's coming with us," Ephraim shouted. "The child ain't yours." Inside, Lillian clung to Clara's leg. Takoda stood ready, arrow notched. "You can't fight them," Clara whispered. "They'll take her, and maybe you too." Clara stood tall. "Then let's not give them the chance." They slipped out the back, Takoda carrying Lillian while Clara rode with a rifle slung across her back. Snow began to fall again, but the posse was fast. Shots rang out across the ridge. Clara screamed as a bullet grazed her shoulder. Takoda turned, took cover behind a boulder, and fired back with deadly precision. One man fell. The rest hesitated. "You'll die for a child that ain't yours," Ephraim shouted. "She is mine," Clara cried back. "And she's his too in every way that counts." Something shifted then. Takoda stepped into the open, bow down. "Let it end. If you want blood, take mine, but you will not take her." Silence. Ephraim raised his rifle, then slowly lowered it. "Fine, keep her. Ain't no child worth dying over." And just like that, they rode away. Chapter 7. A New Spring. Weeks passed. Winter gave way to thaw. The valley bloomed, and Clara's small cabin, one built by townsfolk who'd finally seen courage up close, grew with laughter and warmth. Lillian learned to run again. Clara taught her to read. Takoda planted herbs and hunted nearby. At night, the 3 of them sat by the fire, no longer lost souls, just a family built from ruin. One evening, Takoda took Clara's hand beneath the stars. "I once walked alone," he said. "Thought I would always walk that way." She leaned into him, eyes shining. "Now you walk with us." He nodded, pressing her hand to his heart. "And I will never let go."